let's go ahead and jump in and get started. So I'm David Lair. I've met a few of you. I just joined SIM last year, so I've met a few of you at meetings, but there's probably several of you that I haven't met. So if you don't recognize my name or face, hello, nice to meet you all. And again, thanks for coming and joining on a work day. So we really appreciate seeing you all here. We are going to jump in. Quick reminder, we are recording this session. You may have seen that pop up, and we will have a copy of materials available that we can get to you. We'll make that available after the session. Otherwise, let's go ahead and jump in. We're really excited to have Jack Dowling here. Jack is president and CEO of Votum Technology Group, and he's with us today to discuss strategic technology planning. That's a topic that I'm really excited to get into today. As a quick introduction of Jack, so he founded Votum in 2006. He has over 41 years of experience, and 25 of those are in C-level roles in companies ranging from startups all the way to Fortune 1000 corporations. During that time, he's developed deep industry expertise in strategy, planning, software product development, technology services, telecom, manufacturing, logistics, just all across the board. It's a really impressive resume. And during his career, he's been featured in a variety of magazines. He's spoken at many conferences. Many of you may have heard him speak before, and he won the CIO of the Year award as well. So Jack, we're really excited for you to share your expertise with us today. Thank you so much for being here. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great, thanks. Everybody, thanks for being here. And I wanted to jump in right off the bat and tell you guys that, technology strategy planning has been around for a while. This isn't something that Jack Dowling invented. I mean, I learned this from other people. And, before I became the CIO, I ran strategy planning for Sprint. And I learned how to do it from big consulting firms, frankly. And I've been doing it a long time. And I haven't had a job since I learned how to do it where I wasn't doing it. And it helped me be successful. I can tell you I would have struggled a lot more without having these kinds of plans in place. So let's dive in here. And so the goals for the session, is to ensure that IT executives gain and retain a seat at the table. The reason this happens with a strategy plan is because IT touches every organization in the company more than any other organization. They're more aware of the business projects and technology projects that are taking place, and an IT plan is essentially a plan for the company. So if you're the person that's building that plan, and as the head of IT, it's by default, it's your plan. It also becomes, having done this and worked directly for a CEO, it became the CEO's plan that he presented at the board meetings. It was actually, what are we spending our money on? What are we trying to get from it? And how are we progressing? So it also creates a structure. If you're trying to do true digital transformation, to me, that should mean using IT as a competitive weapon and disrupting your industry. You should be doing things that help your company win, and you should be 100% aligned with the business all the time. If every quarter you're meeting with the business executives, you're understanding their goals and objectives, and you're weaving that into a plan that is prioritized by the senior executive management group, you have guaranteed alignment across the board because everybody's in on it. Everybody knows what's being done. Everybody knows what money's being spent on, and everybody knows what should result from it. So, it's an ongoing process because you're doing it every quarter. And you've got to help the company understand, if you're in a company that's not spending enough on IT, what percentage of revenue should be spent on IT based on what's happening within your industry, because that's what it's going to take to be effective. And then you need to get governance in place, and a plan like this helps you do it by default because your peer group and your boss are helping you to actually drive the priorities for the plan. and it creates an environment that attracts and retains the top talent, because your employees have a very clear picture of how of what their contributions do to drive where the company's headed. I mean, the plan should be fairly transparent to the employees in your company. They should know what's being done, why it's being done, what the company is trying to get to, and how what they're doing is contributing to that overall goal and objectives. It's amazing what a motivator that is for an employee when they know how what they do weaves into the overall plan. And what you're trying to do is create an environment where people want to come to work for your company because they know they're valued there. Because a plan like this, you're addressing people, process, technology, and data. So on the people side of it, you're building people plans. You're building people plans that ensure that your company has the skill sets to get where it needs to go. And you're building employee plans to help employees get where they want to go. And those two things go hand in hand. And if you're doing it effectively, word gets out. I mean, people know that your company's succeeding at what they're trying to do, and that employees are a valued part of that. And finally, your executive management group, your CEO, whether it's a venture funded company, it's a publicly traded company, the CEO has to report on what's being spent, how much is going to be spent, and what's going to result from it. And the board needs to be able to see that there are consistent priorities and the company's actually executing to a plan. And by doing a plan like this, you're actually providing the tool that your CEO needs to be able to present to the board like that. So again, to be able to do it, you've got to have a living plan. You've got to have a plan that you're updating every quarter, because things change. They're changing increasingly quickly. But a good plan like this is fairly pliable, and on a quarter-to-quarter basis, you can shift gears to a reasonable degree. What you want to try to do is eliminate started and stop projects by planning far enough in advance to let you actually achieve something with the projects that you're starting, and you don't want to stop them until you reach certain goals and objectives, and you're setting the groundwork for all that through this plan. So, when you look at what are the components that make up a successful plan, if you don't have these four things at the top, building these four things at the bottom is very difficult, because if these things are not written in stone or fairly concrete, then IT becomes like the tail of the dog, the end of the dog's tail. You're just getting whipsawed back and forth by changes in priorities. And the other thing, that the reason that you want these things written, down on paper with agreement across an executive management group is it's very difficult to set and keep strategy, to keep priorities, if your executive management group doesn't agree on what the strategies and the priorities actually are. So, this is sort of a cascade on what it is you're trying to get to. I mean, the things you have to have in place to get to an to get to an executable plan. Well, so what are the things that are going to drive your funding requirements, and more importantly, what's going to make certain projects get funded over others? So to begin with, there's the market drivers. What do customers want from you, and do you have it? Do your competitors have it and you don't? What you're trying to do with a plan like this is, if you're behind your competitors, you want to catch up, and then you want to pass them. And you want to do it by executing more effectively than they're executing. And cost pressures are going to be an issue for everybody. So, continually decreasing, I'm not a big proponent of continually trying to drive down the cost of IT if it results in an inability to compete. You can use technology to drive down the cost for the company overall by using automation capabilities, use robotic process automation or AI, and allow technologies to do jobs that people have done historically and drive your costs down that way. And you need to obviously be putting in functional improvements to let you get better at what you're doing every single day, because the goal overall for a plan like this, again, is to either increase revenue streams lower your costs or create a competitive advantage. And basically how you do those things is if you start to do projects that lower your costs, it lets you lower your cost of services or products to your customers. You start to increase your revenue streams and you gain a competitive advantage by doing that. Every time you get an incremental gain over a competitor by becoming more efficient as a company, or increasing your ability to sell new products and services to a client, you get a little tick on them from a profitability standpoint. That's money you can reinvest. So people that start to do these incremental technologies like this, it's like climbing a staircase. You just start to get ahead of your competitors, and over a period of time, you get far enough ahead to where they can't catch up. And to me, that's to me, I've always seen IT as a competitive weapon, and it should be used as that from my perspective. And a strategy plan like this actually allows you to do it. So, the other things that are going to impact what gets done as priority versus other potential funding targets. I mean, typically when you do a strategy plan like this, you're starting out with low-hanging fruit. So if you've got systems that are unreliable and not working very well, those are things that need to be solidified up front. You have to get the ABCs done before you can do really advanced stuff. Once the business is confident that the systems are reliable and you're not firefighting every day, then you can shift the whole focus of IT to strategic projects rather than focusing on firefighting. If you're in a firefighting mode, that's not good for your company if you're an IT department, because then you're not doing the strategic things. You're really chasing your tail when it boils right down to it. And so the estimated total return on investment by project is critical, and it's a critical step to go through when you're laying out a plan like this, because you want to do the projects that have the greatest ROI first. And obviously there's some other things that are going to go into that, like what's the timeline for gaining the return on investment, and what are the risks and challenges associated with each of those projects. So those are all things that are going to weigh into what gets funded, what gets done first, second, third, fourth, that type of thing. So when you look at the methodology for how to do this stuff, what you're really doing is you're talking to your customers and you're saying, what could we do for you that would make you do business with us and not do business with our competitors? That's really, the question for a client. But then there's a whole bunch of other questions you'll ask them while you're with them. You're going to go through that same process with all of your executive management people and really the people who work for them. You're trying to get a well-rounded view of how do they see the industry and your competitors, and the things that you could do to be better than your competitors. And you definitely want an inside and outside view on that. And you want to make sure that your management has, people will, if you just go sit down with an executive management group that's not doing this as a formal process, they'll say, oh yeah, we all agree on what we're trying to get to and the priorities to get there. But then you sit down and start to actually talk to them about it, and you find out that they're not in agreement at all, or they're not in agreement completely on key issues. And so it's very important to iron those things out, because what you want to try to do is create army ants. You want everybody marching in step and not having lots of offshoots. You want a straight direction. You're marching down. You've got a series of projects you're executing, and you're sticking to the plan. So once you get a good idea of what your future state should be, then you do an assessment, and you do an assessment of people, process, technology, and data. And that's across the organization. You're trying to figure out, where are we today? And what do we need to do to get to where we're going? So you do a gap analysis between a future state model and a current capabilities. And out of that, you get your roadmap. So this is just a high level overview of what it is you're trying to do. So I'm going to spend the rest of this session telling you basically how to go about doing that. Okay. So, when you're, the first thing is really to meet with your key, and how most of the ones that I've done, I mean, you got to realize I've been doing this for a long time. And, typically you start with your really big customers, the ones that provide the most revenue, and you do most of those guys. And then you do some subset of smaller accounts. But so you get a list put together, and then you define interview set of questions that you're going to ask every single one of these guys. So you're getting a consistent set of questions and answers for each one of them. And then you interview the customers, you compile the results, and you present the results back to the customer and make sure they know that you were listening and you got the message. You do this exact same process internally with your executive management group and the people that report to them. And by doing that, you're kind of you're laying the groundwork for what are we trying to get to. This is how you're setting your future state model. So your fact finding, you're laying out a profile, you're laying out the scope, you're doing the statement of work, and you're budgeting for this. And then the as is your current state. And that's where you're making sure that your management's in alignment. And sometimes after you go through those sessions and you summarize them up, then you're going to have sessions with your management group as a whole to work out the differences between what you're hearing from people that differs from business unit to business unit versus what the CEO is saying. And so, you know, that's a very tricky process to go through. But once they understand what it is you're trying to get to, most executive management groups are functional, and they're going to sit down and work out these issues because they understand how critical it is for everybody to be on the same wavelength. And some companies you'll go into as a CEO, all this exists. You know, I mean, they've been in alignment for a while. You know, so it's going to vary by company, and how you do these plans has to be flexible, and it has to vary based on the what you find when you get there. And so you're getting the management voice, you're getting the customer voice, and then you're doing an operational maturity level assessment of IT when it boils right down to it. What are your for people, process, technology, and data? What are your strengths and weaknesses? What are the opportunities and what are the threats? And then you're laying out your future state model, or what are the functional capabilities we need to have? What do customers really want from us? What are our architectural, staffing, organizational, and process and data needs? So you're laying out very detailed assessments of where you are. Then you're doing your gap analysis. You're laying out your roadmap, which is all the projects you have to do. And one of the difficulties I think that IT has, lots of IT organizations, is the business community doesn't understand the infrastructure projects that need to be done and why they need to be done. And this, by laying this out, this blueprint, you're tying all of these architectural and infrastructure projects, you're tying them into the business initiatives you're trying to achieve. You know, you can't offer AI solutions to your customer if you don't have a metadata model, you don't know where your data is, you don't know how clean your data is. You know, all of those things are factors that you're going to have to address if you really want to do AI in a big way. So, and how do you solve that problem? You plan. And you know, if it's already in place, great. But if it's not, this plan will give you the mechanism to help your business community understand why those things need to be done in order for you to compete. And then you go after and execute the plan. And then every quarter you're doing, you know, it's almost as soon as you've done a quarterly a plan review with executive management, you're starting for the next quarter again. You know, you're starting to go back and see, you know, what's changed since the last time, because, you know, you're starting that process every quarter. And so there's a quarter gap between the time you interviewed the executive management group and their direct reports and the next quarter. So every quarter, it becomes very incremental because you're talking to them so frequently that the quarter to quarter changes become relatively minor. You know, if you let it go a whole year, you can really be off base on what needs to be done as a company. But if you're touching base every quarter and you're doing it as a formal process, it gets very easy to ensure that you're doing the things that are going to help your company win in the marketplace. And so these are the deliverables out of a plan like this. So you've got your current state assessments. We went through this. You know, it's a management assessment, it's an organizational assessment, a competitive summary. You're going through all the processes, everything that needs to be in place for your company to be successful. And then the architecture and infrastructure and the future state model. We talked through what that consists of, and then the gap analysis. Out of the gap analysis becomes the roadmap, the financial attachment to that roadmap. So you're basically saying, here's what we need to do to go forward in the future. Here's the financial requirements of doing that. And then there's going to be some moving around of projects based on what's actually affordable in certain timelines basis versus just pure priority based on return on investment. There's a certain amount of wrestling that has to go on there to get it all smoothed out and in an executable format. And in a quarterly basis, those are the things, frankly, that you're mostly massaging around, because the economy can go up and down, and the amount of spend that you have as an IT organization can go up and down because you have to adjust. I mean, if you're a publicly traded company and the economy dips, then Wall Street's going to expect your CEO to adjust the spending in the company, and your plan is going to be impacted by that. So those are all things that you have to do on a quarterly by quarterly basis. So, when you're doing the assessments, I mean, how I do the assessments, and again, it's up to you what kind of a current state assessment tool you want to use. I use CMMI. And the reason that I do that is that it's been around for a long time. It's really well understood, and it helps you move in a predictable methodology from a very poorly controlled and reactive environment to an environment that's doing continuous improvement. And your goal as a CIO should be to move every single organization, every function in every organization up the operational maturity level scale all the time. And so those are projects that have to be done by IT. And this plan gives you the mechanism to help executive management understand why those projects need to be done in order for you to be able to support the company's goals and objectives. So again, if you can't start to do, I'm just using these things as a consistent example here. You can't start to do intelligent automation, do RPA and AI, if you don't have people with the skill sets. And in a lot of companies, the way I see these things getting done, the business community starts to bring in outside resources to do these projects. They do them, and then they throw them over the wall to IT. And, these kinds of technologies are real different than what IT's done in the past. I mean, for RPA, there's a certain amount of ongoing management that's required of bots. They break. And so IT has to have people that are trained and in the job of fixing those bots. And the same thing with AI. With AI, your models have drift over a period of time. You start with a data set X, but over a year, that data set's going to double in size. And so now it's a data set Y, and your model's no longer going to react to that data set the same way that it did a year ago. So you've got to manage the drift. And if those things are just being thrown over the wall at IT is not being trained to help to manage that. And so these are all the kinds of things that you have to be able to get in place and to continue to mature. And to mature your organization is a very deliberate thing that you have to do. It's not going to happen by accident. You've got to plan it out. People have to be trained. It's just that simple. Or people have to be acquired. And in some instances, you'll acquire people. I mean, you're probably not going to train somebody in your organization to be a data scientist. If you need a data scientist, you're going to either go out and hire one, or you're going to rent one from somebody. But you still need to have it in your plan to ensure that you've got the money to do it. So what does the IT assessment look like? These are all the areas within IT that you're assessing. The organization of processes, development, operations, security, applications, data execution, and network. And again, this is going to be out there, okay? So you don't have to take a bunch of notes on this or anything. These are the things you need to be looking at. And so for each one of these, like on the management alignment, you're going to have a high level thing like this that you're presenting, and it's on the CMMI scale. This is part of the organizational piece, the management. You've also within the organizational piece. If you go back to here, I've just taken you through it. Now on every one of these slides, I've got a box that tells you what you're dealing with. So right here, you're dealing with the organizational piece of this. And you also have an IT process summary and an IT organizational summary. And in the IT process summary, you'll have planning, performance measurement, communications, procurement and vendor management, vendor knowledge, stakeholder integration, standards compliance, process documentation and methods, all these kinds of things need to be addressed. And so you're basically laying out where you think it needs to be, but behind each one of these is a very detailed assessment of exactly where you are and the steps you need to take to go from where you are today to where you need to be tomorrow. And it needs to be staged out in a way that integrates with everything else that has to be done during that timeline. That's why a plan like this is so necessary, because IT is complex and it's not getting simpler. So in order to stage all these things together to make sure that you've got all the processes and methodologies to go with the new technologies you're bringing in place, it requires planning. And if you can do it, off the top of your head and get it right, good for you. But I never could. I needed a plan like this. I also needed a plan like this to help me sell what needed to be done to the executive management group. And then I needed to have it so I could work hand in hand with the CFO and her people to lay out what it was that we were going to do and what it was going to cost, so that she could lay out the overall budget plan for the company, because these projects generally involve IT and the business units. So this would be like the application architecture summary, and integration, openness, platform interoperability, reliability and recovery, security, distribution of processing, process separation, functional decomposition. And again, when you do the plan, you kind of put these lists together for each of the areas. You can start with something like this, but then you kind of tweak it to your environment and what you're doing. These plans are not, you have to tailor this to your company, and each plan for each company is different, and it'll shift over time because different things become concerns based on how the industry is evolving over time and the technologies that are being implemented. So again, these are living plans, and you're constantly modifying and growing them. So this would be, hold on a second. Yeah, this would be an example business case. It's got a description, it's got a value proposition, it's got the benefits and capabilities, and then it's got a financial summary. And the financial summary will have a cost summary, a benefits summary, and an ROI analysis summary. And so, these business cases are the high level things you're trying to get done to win in the marketplace. And then all of the things that IT is doing are making sure that you have the capabilities to provide the technology tools to enable this. And so you're linking all this together, and you're putting together all of the information that the executive management crew needs, so that they've got this available on the internet. They can go look at this anytime they want to, and they know what initiatives are being executed. They know why they're being initiated and why they're being executed, and what they're going to get from it as a company by doing it. So also, you'll need some guiding principles for a thing like this. What are some base things that you need to achieve as a company? Like, I'm going to give you an example. When I was the CIO at CompuCom, we had a little bit of a fractured infrastructure. So, we recognized that our buying ability as a company was going to depend on our ability to shrink down the number of vendors that we had. So we standardized on a certain server set, on a certain networking company, on a certain enterprise DASD device company. We shrunk it down, and by doing that, we had, instead of having expertise that was across the technologies that was an inch deep and a mile wide, like we had all kinds of different operating systems and server types. We had very few. So with the same number of people, we could have a lot more depth of expertise. And so that was one of our guiding principles, was to, in every acquisition of technology, make sure that it's fitting our technology standards. So if you're going to buy a Unix system, make sure that you can tweak that Unix system to run on the type of Unix that you selected as your standard. So again, this is another thing that's tweaked by company, and it's all based on your assessments and what you feel like are the things that are important for you to achieve what you need to achieve. And then the initiative ranking methodology, it's basically a weighing criteria, based on, what you think are the things that are most important and what the percentages are. And again, this is a company by company thing. And then you're taking those and you're applying them to the projects, and you're giving the projects a weight based on the impact they're going to have on the company overall. And that helps drive the priorities. And then the executable plan is what results from this. And again, this is really high level. This is not a realistic plan. Okay, this is a high level business initiatives plan, but associated with this are all of the people, process, data, and technology projects that have to be behind this in order for this to succeed. So, I think this is pretty much a summary of the. I mean, this is I think we finished the presentation at this point, so we got it done early. We've got a lot of time for questions and answers. I hope this has made sense. And again, what we were trying to achieve up front were these goals. So if you do a plan like this, you get a seat at the table because, hey, you're the guy doing the plan. You're the guy that's helping establish. Even if you have a guy whose job it is to do strategy for the company, he's not the guy that's going to build a detailed plan like this. The CIO has to be the guy to do it because it's his organization, it's his money spend, and it's complex and it's intricate, and you've got to have a really good understanding of what's being done in IT across the board to be able to build a plan like this and to execute it successfully. And again, it gives you a plan for digital transformation and to create a competitive weapon out of your organization, because you're listening to the customer outside, you're listening to the customer inside, you're figuring out what your company has to do to win in the marketplace. You're building a plan that will help you do that. And then you're executing the plan. You're sticking to the plan. You're updating it every quarter. You're not doing this project over here or that project over there because it's somebody's pet project. You're doing the projects that are going to help the company win. Another key factor in this is that companies that do a strategy plan like this, when they first introduce it, a lot of times they'll go from doing 80 or 90% tactical projects, they'll shift to doing 80 to 90% strategic projects. And the reason that happens is because the entire executive management group has a clear understanding of what it's going to take to win in the marketplace and what projects constitute winning in the marketplace. And again, the purpose of your company is to make money and win. And so a plan like this helps you do that. And it makes sure IT is working on the right projects. You're 100% aligned with the business 100% of the time because they're helping you build the plan. They're helping set the priorities, and they all have a clear understanding. And so, the other thing that this does too, we've all worked in organizations where you've got one person who is politically powerful in one way or another. A lot of times they have ways of getting the bull by the nose and pulling in a direction that it maybe shouldn't go simply because they have the power to do it. A plan like this, you get everybody wagging their finger at that person because we had a plan. Everybody knows what the plan is. If the plan needs to shift, we'll shift it in the next quarter. And if they've got something that's critical enough and important enough to shift the plan, you shift the plan at the end of the quarter. But when that happens, everybody agrees on it. It's not one guy attacking IT and trying to bully the CIO around to make him do specific projects he wants done. Everybody's executing again like Army ants. Everybody knows what the company's trying to achieve, and everybody's on board. The other thing that I would tell you, what I got in place over time through working with the CFO, is that all the executive management people, their bonuses all got tied to these major initiatives. So they were highly motivated financially to stick to the plan. And if the plan needed to be altered, their goals and objectives got altered, tied to their bonus. So everybody's in lockstep here. And the company's winning. If you're doing this right, the company's winning. It's winning accounts. The company's growing. You're making more money. You're starting to dominate your industry, and everybody's making a lot more money off their stock options. So it's very easy to get people motivated and on board for executing a plan like this when everything's tied in financially. And so you've got an ongoing process for funding. You've got excellent governance. You don't have started to stop projects because everybody understands when anytime that you're going to shift gears at the end of a quarter, one of the first assessments you do is, okay, what's this impact to the plan going to cost us? If we have to stop and start a project, what's going to likely be the cost of that? And as soon as people start to understand the impacts of starting and stop projects, they stop happening, because it's a big financial impact. But it largely goes unknown if you don't have some kind of a process like this. And again, there are people on the phone that have been running IT organizations for a long, long time, and you guys know how to run an IT organization. It's not like anything that I'm telling you here is new. This is just a framework that has been around for a long time, and it worked for me like clockwork. And it's the reason that I was interested in getting it in front of the SIM members is that I don't care who you use to do this. I don't care if you do it yourself internally. If you have it, it's going to help you be better, and it's going to help your entire company be better. It's going to help you execute better. It's going to help you win in the marketplace. It's going to help you attract and retain the right talent, because your people are smart. If they go in and they look around and your environment is chaos, they pick up on that very quickly. If everybody's chasing fires, firefighting all day, they pick up on that very quickly. If you've been able to shift IT from firefighting mode to where you're a strategic enabler for the business and you're helping the business win, people recognize that too. And word gets out. It gets out around town. People want to go to work for you because they want to learn how you're doing that. And also they appreciate that it's clear how what they're doing contributes to these overall goals and objectives. And so and I think that I've been through this. I think right now would be a great time to do questions and answers. So I'm wide open.
Hey, Jack, I got a question for you. This is Glenn.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned in your presentation here, by the way, great outline. Really appreciate you presenting this today. You mentioned the project's priority, ranking them by ROI. What about the like the cost plus stuff and the security initiatives, the audits, the legacy debt projects that don't have an ROI necessarily? What's the best way to sell and prioritize those against ones that are more obvious that are cost savings?
Yeah, Glenn, that's a great question. And it's the fundamental reason for this plan, because all those advanced things that you want to do to win in the marketplace, if you don't have adequate security, you can't do them. And I have some very strong feelings. I mean, I haven't been a CIO for a while, and I've been in a COO role and then a CEO role. And I would tell you, and I've been on boards. I spent on a lot of boards over the last few years, and the CIO needs to be on the audit committee. In my mind, there should be no question about that. And probably if you've got a chief security officer working for you, he needs to be in there with him. If he doesn't work for you, he needs to be in there. But the reason for that is those projects have to get pushed forward. When you're laying out the plan is very comprehensive, and everybody has to understand. Like, I'm going to give a tangible example of something that I did as a CIO using a plan like this, where we didn't have a reliable infrastructure. When I went to work at CompuCom, when you hit enter in the call center, when you hit enter on your PC in the call center, it was 25 seconds before the system responded to you. Everything was slow. Our network was slow. Our servers were slow. And so we recognized fairly quickly, this was in '94, before companies even had an internet drop. We recognized fairly quickly that if we built internet capabilities, that customers would no longer be ordering from our call center, which largely consisted of high school graduates, or college graduates that didn't have a degree in computer science. And they were ordering complex servers and complex desktops. We had a horde of return merchandise. So if we could build a website and get our customers buying off a website, buying standardized servers and desktops that we had already pre-built with them with ghosted images, that we could really reduce our return merchandise, and we could shrink the call center, both things which would reduce our costs and let us beat our competitors. But enable to do that, that website was going to ride right on top of our operational systems. They were ordering directly right out of our operational systems. If your operational systems aren't reliable, you can't provide advanced capabilities. So those infrastructure projects, somebody mentioned to me that, well, this looks like a presentation on how to be a CIO. No, this is a framework that lets you plan what you're going to do. being a CIO is complex and it's hard, man. You got to have great emotional intelligence. You got to be able to communicate to people, and this is an instance right here where the framework will help you, but its skill is going to come down to you as an individual being able to help the executive management group understand how those infrastructure projects are going to affect your advanced business capabilities. If you don't have those reliable capabilities, you can't offer those more advanced capabilities. And so it all has to take time to plan. It's back to that people, process, technology, and data. If you don't have all four, you're not going to succeed. And it becomes almost a preaching thing, but the more you're meeting with guys, the more the light bulbs are going on. And the more you start to help the business, the more they just accept what you're saying. There's a lot less questioning. As soon as you can get past the firefighting, and all of a sudden you're focused on strategic projects, and your salespeople are starting to tell your executive management, we're winning accounts because of what IT is providing to our customers, the whole flavor changes. And that's largely what a plan like this does for you, is it positions you so that you become a driver, IT becomes a driver in the company rather than a ball and chain. And that description right there is what the head of sales told me that our IT organization had become at Compicom, over a period of 2 or 3 years there, where, they couldn't get anything done. They couldn't get reports to the clients. Oh, we put up a data warehouse. We put up business objects. We trained their people on how to do their own reports. We got out of the reporting business. And there was never a time when salespeople couldn't get reports to clients that they needed. First of all, we had a huge number of standardized reports on the website clients could just ask for, and then our sales group could produce customized reports for clients like crazy. Granted, we still had a small group doing crystal reports, but you get the gist. It's you're trying to enable and drive capabilities so that you can start to overcome your competitors by lowering your prices, increasing your capabilities, and just outperforming them completely. And we were able to do that. We basically killed everybody in our industry. We were the last of the VARs, that survived that era, and it was because we had better stuff. And there's no company out there that can't do what I'm talking about in today's era, because there are more tools to gain competitive advantage using technology today than there have ever been. But you have to figure out what those tools are for your company. What is it that you can offer to your clients and to your internal people to make the company better so that you can outperform the competition? Okay. That answer your question?
It did. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'll let somebody else go. I've got another question for you, but I'll see if anybody else has something before
Okay.
going into the next one.
Anybody else?
Questions from the audience?
Jack, this is Kevin Campbell.
Hey, Kevin.
I enjoyed the presentation. Great information. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
What techniques have you found in your history of the executive who says we don't need no stinking IT plan? This is just wasted time and effort. One of those individuals. How do you address that after you present your rationale? Because that there's one of those in every single organization.
There is, Kevin. It's funny. That's a good question. Thanks for asking it. I think you have to lay out the rationale, kind of like I've done here. You have to help them understand that that this is complex. And if they want to start getting into the details, you can easily justify it by taking them into the weeds, but they'll get boggled fairly quickly. And IT is a big, complex monster. And even in a small company, managing IT and helping your company win is not simple. And I guess I've done these plans for a company. I'm going to give you all an example. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but the chief operating officer brought me in to do a strategy plan for this company, and the person who was head of HR wanted the CIO fired. And so when I got into the conversation with her, she wanted him fired because he wouldn't do everything right now. she felt like that IT shouldn't have to set priorities, that they should just be able to do anything that was requested of IT right now. Well, that's not possible. Everybody on this phone call knows that. You have to be able to set priorities. Well, how do you set priorities? You have to lay out what it is the company needs to do to win. And there's a mechanism for doing that, and that's what I just covered. So in order, you've got to help that person understand why prioritization is necessary, and then you have to establish how do you create a rationale for prioritization. And it all goes back to what are you trying to achieve as a business, and then you drive everything down from there. Because IT, I mean, this is a kind of a rough statement here, but I think you all agree if you think about it. IT doesn't need to be doing things that aren't going to help the business win. But when you look at the core things that IT does, they all help the business win. You can't help the business if somebody cracks your system and steals your customer data. That's not okay. That ruins your company reputation. So, Kevin, that's how I would have the conversation. And it's usually a one-on-one conversation that I have with that person over lunch, and then some follow-on meetings. And you know how this goes. It's being a CIO, it's a multifaceted job, and you have to spend a lot of time doing consultative selling with your peer group to help them understand what it takes to be successful, not just at IT, but as an organization overall. And it's just slowly getting people on board with you so that they understand the requirements and the needs for a plan like this. I can tell you that it's very difficult to succeed, I think, without a plan like this in some form or fashion, because it's just too big, too complex, and it's too difficult to keep everybody on board with you if you don't have one.
Great. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
You bet. Other questions?
Hey, Jack, this was a great presentation. I learned a lot. We always look for value-added, benefits to our clients, being a consulting firm. A lot of times we get brought in on project planning or resource management. I was wondering do you have a copy of this presentation somewhere?
Yeah, it's going to be available out on the SIM website. The video of this whole session, plus the hard copy of the presentation, will be out there. So for anybody, I'm making this available to everybody. And the reason I'm doing it is because, over the years, I've been involved in IT a long time, and I was a computer science major back in the 70s. And, over all these years, I've continued to see the question asked in so many IT forums, how do we achieve alignment with the business? Well, I kind of learned how to do that back before I ever became a CIO. I ran strategy planning at Sprint, and I got trained by consulting companies on how to do this stuff, and I was doing it for Sprint. And then when I became a CIO, the first thing I did, the first 90 days I was there, I did a strategy plan, and it greased the skids for me as a CIO. I just can't tell you how thankful that I had that as a tool. And so I want, if it were up to me, I would have every IT guy, every CIO out there have a plan like this, because it will help America compete better. It'll help every CIO out there have an easier time doing his job. This is a hard job. It's difficult. Any senior, any C-level job is a hard job. And this is a tool that helps CIOs do their job. And again, there's still lots of hard parts to the job. This consultative selling thing you have to do with your peer group, it's one of the biggest challenges, and you've got to do it with your boss. You've got to do it with your subordinates. The CIO job is a big sandwich. You're getting pressed from all sides. But this plan is your savior. It's the thing that helps you get everybody on the same wavelength, including your subordinates. It helps your subordinates not be worked to the bone every day of the year, because everybody's pressing on them to do everything right now. What you wind up with is a lot of poorly executed projects when you have that kind of pressure on your IT organization. if you can create an environment where everything is staged and executed, it's not like people aren't going to work hard. IT is a work hard environment. It's just, that's the job. But when they're trying to do, 120 hours of work every week, you're going to wind up with poorly executed projects and an angry business community that's not getting what they think they should get. It's all because they don't know what the plan should be. They don't have a clear vision of what IT should be achieving. And what's a logical way for them to go about it? What are reasonable costs for what they're trying to get done? So, Michael, did that help?
Absolutely. Because, as a consulting company, we try to find how to help the CIOs and the CTOs, sell these projects to the business communities. And sometimes we do really well for them, and sometimes we miss the mark. And listening to you talk right now made a lot of sense on how to approach these hurdles sometimes.
Well, I think you have to take a holistic view. If you're trying to justify a project, it gets very difficult because you're justifying it against what? You have to have the whole thing laid out. I mean, this is all about, when it boils right down to it, this is all about, you got X amount of money to spend and you've got Y achievables that you want to gain. So you have to figure out, how can I spend? I mean, there's only so much a company can spend on IT, no matter what advantages IT is going to provide them. So you have to figure out, what are the things that are going to get me the greatest return on investment? And nobody's going to be able to tell the company that better than IT, because IT can see the whole picture holistically. They can see everything that's out there. And again, this isn't something IT is going to do in a vacuum. You're going to do it in conjunction with all your business partners and frankly, the customers outside. This whole thing is a big united, concerted effort to do the things that are going to matter the most, so that the company has the best chance of winning.
Yeah, that's well said, Jack. That's well said. Yeah, and as we're hitting the top of the hour here, I think it's probably time to wrap up. Jack, this was really good. I took a lot of notes. Thanks a lot. A lot of good questions here at the end too. So Jack, I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate all the knowledge you imparted on us today. And to the members, thanks for joining today. Thanks for participating. Thanks for asking great questions. This presentation will be available, as we said. And then our next in-person meeting is May 9th. So look for the emails for registration for that, and mark your calendars for May 9th. Otherwise, I just want to say thanks again, Jack, and just everyone have a good day and have a good weekend.
Thanks for attending, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Jack.
Bye-bye.